If you've ever gone out to your raised bed early in the morning, lifted a bit of mulch, and found nothing, no wriggling earthworms, no bustling underground life, it's a gut punch. You put in the compost, built the perfect bed, watered faithfully, and yet your worm population seems to have packed up and left town overnight. I've been there. One season, I walked out to find my once thriving worm community had vanished almost completely. My beautiful raised bed, once rich and alive, was suddenly eerily quiet beneath the soil. It felt like something was seriously wrong, and it was. Worms don't just disappear randomly. When they flee, they're sending us a clear message. Something in here isn't working for us. Today on Soil Sage Chronicles, let's dig deep into the hidden culprits that drive worms away, including the one common amendment you should never add to your soil if you want worms to stick around. Whether you're a beginner gardener or a seasoned soil nerd, this is a topic worth mastering. Before we diagnose the problem, let's remind ourselves why losing worms is such a big deal. Worms are the engine of living soil. They create air channels, improve water infiltration, break down organic matter, and leave behind worm castings, the gold standard of natural fertilizers. A healthy worm population is a living indicator that your raised bed ecosystem is thriving. When worms suddenly leave, it's not just inconvenient. It's a warning sign that your soil environment is becoming inhospitable for worms, for microbes, and eventually for your plants too. Culprit number 1, adding unfinished or hot compost. This is honestly one of the sneakiest mistakes, especially in raised beds. I know many gardeners are tempted to throw in a heap of half-finished compost at the end of the season, thinking, well, it'll break down eventually, and yeah, it will. But in the meantime, that compost can generate heat and release ammonia as it continues decomposing. Worms are sensitive creatures. They just can't survive high temperatures or ammonia off-gassing. So, if your bed suddenly smells sour, sharp, or like a barnyard, that's a big red flag. What to do instead? Make sure compost is fully matured before adding it to worm-active beds. Mature compost smells earthy, not sour. If you're in doubt, just leave it to cure for a few extra weeks outside the bed. It's definitely better to be safe than wormless. Culprit number 2, overdoing mineral amendments and lime. A lot of us love to remineralize our soil. A sprinkle of wood ash, a scoop of lime, a handful of rock dust. We've all been there. But here's the catch. Worms are incredibly sensitive to pH changes. Too much lime or wood ash can push the soil pH upward quickly, creating an alkaline environment that worms find irritating or even deadly. I actually learned this the hard way one spring. I decided to sweeten my raised bed soil after a heavy season of mulching with acidic leaf litter. I added a generous layer of wood ash and lime, and within a week, worm activity had plummeted. What to do instead? Always test your soil pH before adding alkaline amendments. If you need to adjust pH, do it gradually and in small increments. Remember, worms thrive in neutral to slightly acidic soil, around pH 6.0 to 7.0. Culprit number 3, chemical residues and contaminated inputs. This one is honestly heartbreaking because it often happens unintentionally. Herbicide residues in grass clippings, persistent pesticides in store-bought compost, or even contaminated straw can create a toxic environment underground. Worms pick up these chemicals through their skin and digestive systems, and many residues are lethal or just downright repellent. A few years back, a fellow gardener brought me some free compost from a municipal site. I mixed it into my raised bed, feeling pretty enthusiastic. 2 weeks later, worms were gone, seedlings were stunted, and my lettuce leaves curled in strange ways. Turns out, the compost was contaminated with aminopyralid, a persistent herbicide. What to do instead? Always know the source of your compost, mulch, and amendments. If you're unsure, run a bean test. Plant beans in a small pot with the amendment. If they grow distorted, don't use it, and definitely avoid lawn clippings from chemically treated lawns. Culprit number 4. Dry or waterlogged soil. Worms breathe through their skin, which, absolutely needs to stay moist. Dry soil equals suffocation for them. But too much water? Well, that's just as deadly. Worms will actually leave a waterlogged raised bed to avoid drowning. In raised beds, soil moisture can swing wildly, especially if your bed has poor mulching or sits in full sun. During hot, dry spells, moisture evaporates really quickly. On the flip side, during rainy seasons, some raised beds act like bathtubs, with nowhere for excess water to drain. So, what should you do instead? Maintain a thick layer of organic mulch, like shredded leaves, straw, or compost. Check moisture regularly by digging down 4 to 6 inches. The soil should feel like a wrung-out sponge. And make sure you've got good drainage at the base of your raised bed. Culprit number 5. Overfeeding with high nitrogen materials. Kitchen scraps, fresh manure, and grass clippings can be great worm food in moderation. But too much fresh nitrogen can heat up and sour the soil, creating ammonia pockets that drive worms away. If you've ever lifted a layer of grass clippings to find a slimy, smelly mat, you've seen this in action. Worms won't tolerate it, they'll simply leave for a better neighborhood. So, what to do instead? Always mix nitrogen-rich materials with plenty of browns like dry leaves or shredded cardboard. Add kitchen scraps in thin layers and bury them under soil or mulch to prevent hot spots. It's also a good idea to pre-compost high nitrogen inputs before adding them to the bed. The big one, don't add fresh wood ash or large lime doses. Let's circle back to the number 1 culprit I see over and over again in raised beds: fresh wood ash and excessive lime. These amendments are often added with good intentions, to boost calcium, balance acidity, or add potassium. But when applied heavily, they dramatically raise soil pH, burn worm skin, and change the soil chemistry almost overnight. In nature, changes like this happen slowly. Worms can adapt to gradual shifts, but when we dump a bucket of ash into the bed, it's like a chemical shock wave. Worms feel it instantly and flee to safer ground. If you've been adding ash regularly and noticing declining worm activity, this might be your smoking gun. Better alternatives: use crushed eggshells or slow-release minerals for calcium. Compost wood ash first by mixing it into a compost heap rather than applying it raw. And apply lime only if a soil test indicates a real need, and even then do so sparingly. So, how do we get those worms back and, keep them happy? Here's what has worked beautifully in my own beds. Add fully finished compost regularly to feed worms gently and build stable soil structure. Maintain moisture and mulch deeply, especially through temperature extremes. Avoid chemical inputs. Stick to organic, traceable materials. Let the soil rest between big amendments to allow worms and microbes to adjust. Encourage biodiversity by adding leaf litter, decayed wood, and varied organic matter. Within weeks of making these changes, my beds were alive again. When I pulled back the mulch, I found worms returning. Not just a few stragglers, but thriving colonies. When worms flee, they're not being dramatic. They're giving us valuable feedback. Raised beds are unique ecosystems, and maintaining the right balance takes a little wisdom and observation. The key lesson? Not everything good for soil is good for worms, especially in large, sudden doses. Take the time to watch, adjust, and nurture your soil environment gently. Your worms will reward you with rich, fertile earth and vibrant plants for years to come. If you found this deep dive helpful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with fellow gardeners who might be wondering why their worms disappeared overnight. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on Soil Sage Chronicles. We dig into the real practical secrets of soil health every week, helping gardeners like you create thriving, living gardens naturally. Subscribe, share, and grow with us.